It's Black Friday. While you're looking for deals, so are the Florida Gators, as we're still waiting on the next head coach to be announced. We'll also be joined by Ian Cummings of Pro Football Network to talk about the Florida Gators in the 2022 NFL Draft and his latest 7-round mock draft, only here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day, available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by NetSuite. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth. Head to netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA for special end-of-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. Happy Black Friday. I am Brandon Olson. You can find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. I'm also the founder of Whole9Sports.com, where you can find all of my written work. And I am wearing the same shirt I was yesterday because I'm recording this on Wednesday night because I'm not recording on Thanksgiving because I will be stuffed. So I am recording this again Wednesday night. So yeah, but first, before we get into the Ian Cummings bit, we're going to talk about the coaching update. I got 3 more coaches to talk about for you. I mentioned one of them on yesterday's episode, but that's going to be later on. I'm talking about this because Mark Stoops, of course, is the head coach of Kentucky, like I just mentioned, and Lance Daw on Locked On Kentucky on Wednesday's episode was like, oh, Mark Stoops would not leave Kentucky for Florida. And well, Lance, I kind of agree, but at the same time, I have my reasons for why I'm not saying I think he will, but why I think he would take the Florida job if offered. And I think at the very least, we owe that, a little deep dive into it. So Kentucky's head coach, of course, Mark Stoops, experience as a defensive backs coach at South Florida, Wyoming, Houston, Miami, Arizona, and Florida State. And that's great for Mark Stoops because when you come to Florida, DBs are going to come to you. That's how that works. Florida gets DBs no matter how bad we are. DBs are coming to Florida. So Mark Stoops being able to work with them initially would be fantastic. Could see a $2 million pay increase in Gainesville, and I think that's a reasonable, modest increase there. He's currently making about $5 million with Kentucky, which is, $2 million is a lot. That's like, what? That's adding 40% salary to his current salary. So I don't see why that would be a big deal there. He could look to bring other members of his Kentucky staff with him, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. I could see some people because, again, Mark Stoops, defensive backs coach. He's a defensive-oriented coach, which is actually the theme today. Apparently, didn't even realize that at first, but here we are. And Mark Stoops has had multiple top 30 classes at Kentucky. And I realize top 30 seems like nothing really, but he's had these top 30 classes at Kentucky. The prestige of Florida, way higher. The resources at Florida, way higher. The program tradition at Florida, way higher. So Mark Stoops has been able to do more with less, which I get it. Reminds us of Dan Mullen with Mississippi State. And we were like, oh, well, once he gets to Florida, he's going to clean house and we are dumb. But no, not the case of Mark Stoops. I don't believe so. Mark Stoops has built these top 30 classes, and Mark Stoops has put plenty of players into the NFL from Kentucky, specifically DBs over the past couple of years. He's really been working, and then in the upcoming Senior Bowl, there's a couple guys. So Mark Stoops has been doing a fantastic job at Kentucky. I don't think he's likely to come to Florida because I don't think Florida would offer it to him, which Lance Daw mentioned. He's not a flashy name, and Florida seems to be looking for a flashy name. Another name that I'm going to talk about is someone that I'm not super keen on coming back here. And I said back here, so you get that. Yesterday I spoke about Brian Johnson, who's the Eagles quarterback coach. Now I'm talking about Dan Quinn, the Cowboys defensive coordinator, former coach of the Atlanta Falcons. Bit of a career resurgence recently. His defense has been a lot better. He's got Micah Parsons, who he's been using phenomenally. By the way, Micah Parsons was always going to be a versatile chess piece that needed to be used in the right way. Dan Quinn is doing exactly that. Former defensive coordinator and defensive line coach for Florida. Currently, he's on the Dallas Cowboys staff with Joe Philbin and Ben McAdoo, who have offensive coordinator and head coach experience, although they both sucked at it, and they could come to Florida with him. However, I'm not sure Joe Philbin and Ben McAdoo are really a college-friendly scheme, But you've got Scott Tolzien, who used to be a quarterback in the NFL, and Doug Nussmeier, who can come with Dan Quinn to Florida to be the offensive coordinator. I also wouldn't rule out Brian Johnson as an offensive coordinator possibility here. I mentioned him yesterday as a head coaching candidate, but I think he's more likely going to be an offensive coordinator kind of guy. And Dan Quinn's been out of college for a long time, which worries me because recruiting has changed. Everything has changed. Dan Quinn was recruiting before social media was blown up like it is, but he did bring players like Alex Anzalone, who was notorious for committing, decommitting, and Jared Davis to Gainesville. So he's got the reputation of bringing NFL caliber players to Gainesville. Finally, Alex Grinch, the Oklahoma defensive coordinator. I mentioned him yesterday with Lincoln Riley. If Lincoln Riley came here, maybe Alex Grinch would follow, but maybe Alex Grinch just gets the head coaching job himself. Alex Grinch is a defensive back specialist like Mark Stoops, but he was at Missouri, Ohio State, Washington, and Wyoming. So the only thing they shared was Wyoming, which is great, whatever. But Alex Grinch has done a lot with this Oklahoma defense over the past couple of years. This year is kind of rough, but just 2 years ago, they were like a top 26 passing defense when they were number, 130 or something like that, when he, like the year before he got there. So he's on Oklahoma staff with Cale Gundy and Bill Bedenbaugh, who are co-offensive coordinators. And of course, they are Lincoln Riley disciples at this point. But I would imagine that one of them would be enticed to come to Gainesville with Alex Grinch, should he be hired, because they would get sole play calling duties, which they don't get in Oklahoma because Lincoln Riley is that guy. So that could entice him to come to Gainesville. And Alex Grinch is also on staff with current Oklahoma running backs coach DeMarco Murray, who I wouldn't rule out wanting to come here for a bigger job, maybe running backs coach, run game coordinator also, or maybe do a co-offensive coordinator thing here, but I don't think that works out well when you don't have an offensive-based head coach. So Alex Grinch would probably have to find a bona fide offensive coordinator, which I'm sure he could do. I wouldn't doubt that, especially with someone that's going to be as sought after as Alex Grinch will be. This is it, the putt to win the tournament. If you sink it, the championship is yours. But on your backswing, your cat climbs in front of your PlayStation and your screen and you can't see the meter. And then you shank it. Oh my gosh. Is that how you're running your business? Poor visibility because you're still relying on spreadsheets and outdated finance software. To see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes and close your books in no time while staying well ahead of your competition. Over 27,000 businesses already use NetSuite, and right now through the end of the year, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financing program to those ready to upgrade at netsuite.com/LocdownNCAA. Head to netsuite.com/LocdownNCAA for special end-of-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. That is netsuite.com/LocdownNCAA. All right, and here I am joined by Ian Cummings from Pro Football Network, Ian_Cummings_9 on Twitter. How you doing, Ian?
Doing good, man. Well, I guess not doing good. You just wasted like 2 minutes of analysis. We got started and I was getting into my whole spiel and then he's like, "Oh wait, we're not recording." So come on, man. No, it's fine. It's fine. I get it.
I noticed something was different on the screen, and that evidently is that there was no timer there, timing how long it had been recording. So that was really fun. But we had Ian on a month or two ago to talk about his last 7th round mock. Now we have another 7th round mock from Ian that released last week. And I know you already explained this, but now explain it for the actual listeners here. Kaiir Elam was the first Gator off the board, 22nd overall to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, so I remember I told you last time we were going over the mocks because I dove into some Florida guys right before the podcast just to kind of brush up on them. And, I came away very impressed with some of the little things that I saw. And I was like, I only had a couple guys in this one. I'm probably going to have more in the next one. And lo and behold, I did, obviously leading it off with Kaiir Elam. And I don't think there's any competition for who's going to be the first off the board from Florida other than Elam. I think he's far and away the best prospect that the school has and has been. During the summer, he was kind of a CB1 candidate for me. I don't think he's going to be there anymore, but he's still in the first round conversation. The Florida defense hasn't quite meshed this year, but, I'm not going to penalize Elam for that. I think more often than not, and he was hurt a little bit earlier in the year, but when he's been healthy, I think he's been good. And he's kind of flashed those trademark traits that really drew me to him in the summer. And those traits were, having that elite hip fluidity for his size at 6'2", 193 pounds. You look at those 6'2" guys, sometimes they can be a little leggy, not quite as efficient with their weight transfers. And, the margin for error at corner is very slim because you're mirroring these NFL receivers who are really twitchy. They can change directions quickly. So if you fall a step behind, sometimes that's all they need to get into space and burn you. So not only is he super fluid for his size, he's also physical. He's aggressive. I like how quickly he can process. I love his ball skills too. So I think he has all the traits that you need to be a number one cornerback in the NFL. And I look at the Chiefs, their secondary. Obviously, the defense has kind of rebounded since the start of the year, but I still think they could use more talent. I think they have a couple contracts set to expire. So I look at them. They like versatility in their secondary a lot. But I also think there's value in having a guy that can lock down one end and kind of free you up to do other things in the rest of the secondary. And I think Kaiir Edelman is exactly that guy. Just put him on one side and forget about him, So I think that, this corner class, it's weird. He's fallen down the board a little bit, obviously 22nd, not as high as he went last time. But, that's not really a slight to him. It's more of a nod to how strong this corner class is. You look at guys like Derek Stingley Jr., obviously Andrew Booth, Trent McDuffie, Ahmad Gardner, and then Washington's Kyler Gordon too. I recently scouted him and I was blown away. So this corner class is really strong at the top. So sometimes guys are just going to fall a little bit. Me personally, I don't think Elam should fall out of round one. I think his athletic testing is going to be good enough to kind of reinforce that. I think he's definitely, if not a round one guy, someone who's going to be swiped with the first picks in the second round because he's a talented player. And he's got a bright future ahead, in my opinion. I've always been a big fan of him. I think he's a good fit for the Chiefs.
As you should be a big fan of his. There's another Gator defender who I noticed that, spoiler alert, Brenton Cox Jr., I believe, is in your last mock, and he is not here now.
Yeah.
But the other defensive lineman that was in your mock and is here now is Zachary Carter. You have him going to the Patriots at 89. And by the way, I hate that instantly because I just hate the Patriots. But I love your reasoning for it.
Yeah. No, the Patriots, they favor versatility on that line, and I think they have their defensive tackle that they can just put at 3 tech and Christian Barmore. I think Zachary Carter, first off, the Patriots, I think they could use some extra edge depth. They do have Matthew Judon, who's been a very good player this year. But I do think they could use a little more depth there. And I think Zachary Carter, if you're looking for depth guys, not only is he depth, but, he's 6'4", 285. I think he gets shade inside with that size. I really like that versatility element to his game. He has a good first step. I think he's very powerful too. When he times the extensions properly, he can definitely levy that power and generate disruption off of that. So I think that you look at that, what the Patriots are looking for, he's a guy at 285. You can put him on the edge. That's rare. You don't often see that, but he moves very well. He's pretty light on his feet, a lot more than I'd expect for a guy with those measurements. He wears that weight really well. So I look at that, it's just the versatility element because teams nowadays are using hybrid fronts, mixing things up on that back end. It kind of, the defensive line kind of facilitates all that, what's going on the defense. You can get a 3-man front and then kind of mix things up on the back end. I think Zachary Carter is one guy that kind of flourishes in that system because whatever you're doing, I feel like there's a role for him. There's a spot for him on the field. If you got an odd front, then you can file in at 3 tech, be that 285 guy. But also if you got an even front, I think he can shade in a defensive end easily. So having that versatility, having that all-around utility, and he's been pretty productive this year too. So I think that Zachary Carter, he's kind of working his way into that day 2 conversation. Testing will be key as always in solidifying that, but I expect him to test pretty well for his size, and that all-around utility is just kind of going to kind of strengthen his stock as draft season comes around. So I'm a fan of his. I projected him onto the interior at first, but the more I look at him, I think he's kind of a guy. He's more one of those guys where don't pigeonhole him into one spot. He can play edge. He can go a little bit inside. Just let him play where he can, situationally where he matches up best. And I think having that flexibility is a very valuable thing. We talk about flexibility with linebackers and safeties and corners and stuff like that, but it applies just as much on the defensive line. If you can have a guy who can fulfill both roles, I think that's valuable. And I think Zachary Carter provides that.
All right. And then there's the last person for this segment, who's the last day 2 pick here. Someone who wasn't in the mock last time, but I do remember you speaking about him, saying that you liked his game. Justin Shorter, the wide receiver, to the Bills at 93 overall.
Yeah, so this was a fun one, man. He's a fun player, and it's an interesting player too because he was a highly rated recruit, transferred from Penn State. And a lot of people kind of just forgot about him. We kind of got buried. At first there was a lot of hype when he was coming out of high school. I think he's like around 6'5", 220 or something, 6'5", 210, somewhere in that range. He's over 200. He's 6'5", maybe going to measure in a little shorter, like 6'4.5" or something. But, he's definitely an athletic specimen. That much you can say. And it definitely shows up on tape. I think he has enough vertical athleticism to get upfield. He's flashed some lateral agility as a route runner, which I really like. It seems like he's got a lot of the athletic traits, still figuring out how to channel it. But he's been hot lately. He's been making plays. And I look at that, I look at his ability. I think he has enough athleticism to separate. And I also think, he's just got, that big frame. He can easily box out guys at the catch point, and he has the athleticism to go up, contort, the ball tracking ability, the body control. I think he's flashed all of that on occasion. So I think that, looking at him, might not have that top-notch production that you're looking for from early round receivers, but he's going to test very well for his size. And I think that alone, I think back to Miles Boykin, a guy who didn't have great collegiate production, but tested well and ended up going, early on to the Ravens. So I think, honestly, I think Shorter might be a better prospect. Now, I do think Boykin was overdrafted. I definitely overdrafted, but Shorter has those traits, and also you think about the situation at Florida, coaches not utilizing guys properly all the time. I think there's a case to be made that he could have done even more. And I know Brandon's like, look, he's like, yeah, yep, that's it. So, I think going to the Bills especially is a good fit for him. I think the Bills have always, they like to have a variety of guys in the receiving cores. You think back to them now, they got guys like Gabriel Davis, Isaiah Hodgins was a guy that they picked up. But then they also have those smaller guys, those utility guys, Cole Beasley, a great slot, Stephon Diggs, kind of that X guy, so who just does everything. So I think that, having that variety, having a guy, I think that the one thing they might be lacking is a guy like Justin Shorter, who could be that X factor with that size and that athleticism.
Anybody else make money this weekend? Because I know I didn't. I tried, but I didn't. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. Obviously, Florida sucks, so that sucked for me. But Florida's basketball has been doing pretty well for me, covering, yay. And BetOnline covers award shows, TV shows, and reality TV with real-time updated odds and props on almost anything you can imagine. Is the best way to place your bets, and it's 100% free to sign up. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Make sure to use promo code LOCKEDON, that is LOCKED, no space, ON, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with betonline.ag. Have y'all tried Built Bar Puffs? Because they good. I'm just gonna let you know that Built Bar is the best protein bar on the market, and Built Bar Puffs are incredibly scrumptious. If you're trying to eat clean, but you've got a sweet tooth like me, that is no longer a problem. Built Bar is your low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and most importantly, high fiber solution. You can even enjoy it if you're keto. Remember to use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your next order. That is LOCKED, LOCKED 15 to get 15% off of your next order at built or builtbar.com. All right, and then someone who I've been talking about extensively and someone I will continue to talk about is running back Damien Pierce. You have him going to the Chargers at pick 123. And I love him so much, and I love seeing his name that high in the draft.
Yeah, man. Honestly, I know he got invited to the Senior Bowl. He accepted, so he's gonna be down in Mobile, man. And I couldn't be happier. I'm right there with you. Because he was on my scouting report list this past week, so I actually wrote up my scouting report on him. So I was able to go in depth and see his traits, and I can see why you'd like him. I can see why everyone likes him. He is a sleeper in this running back class, and as you can see, like, he wasn't even in my mock last time. Obviously, honestly, I hadn't heard a ton of him at that point, but then, heard about him. I kind of came across him a little bit. Then he goes to the Senior Bowl, so that gets him a bit of buzz. And then you scout him, and man, he is a good player. I think, to me, he was one of the more well-rounded backs that I've come across. I think as a runner, I think he's got pretty good instincts. I think he's got pretty good lateral agility. He's not an elite athlete, but I think he has enough burst. It's more of a long track explosiveness. He doesn't have great short area burst. He can get run down behind pretty easily in the pocket. but, I do think he has some creative capacity. I love his balance. He's not a north-south runner. He can be creative. He can stack cuts. He can bounce off contact. But then on top of that, man, I mean, going beyond running, he's a really good receiver too. I mean, this guy can roll out of the backfield. He has a much more enhanced route tree than you would expect for running backs. I mean, he does a lot of different things. He can go up the seam and catch passes downfield. He can corral the ball. He can reach for it. So you love to see those ball skills from a running back too. And he can get run after catch yards. He knows how to transition from a catcher to a runner pretty quickly. There are a few focus drops on tape, but I like that he has the natural ability. And then a pass blocker too. I think he brings the tools there too. I mean, he squares up guys. He's got good balance, and I think he gets after it. I love some of the reps that I saw because he wasn't shying away from those challenges. He was standing tall and he was taking care of his assignment. So I think about, what NFL scouts and coaches are thinking of in running backs, because I think that, the 3-down utility, the pass blocking, the pass receiving is something that gets underrated sometimes because, running backs, most of what they're doing is running, right? So that's kind of what draws the highlights. But, if you're an NFL scout or coach and you're thinking, what if there's a blitz coming on third and long and who do I have on the field to protect my quarterback if someone gets free? You don't want a bad pass blocking running back. So having a guy who has that pass blocking utility like Damien Pierce, I think that just helps his stock even more. So, like I said, I don't think he has elite upside, but in the modern NFL, running backs are getting more and more replaceable. That's just how it is, right? So if you fall into a situation where you have a good offensive line, and if you have at least good vision, good contact balance, and at least baseline traits, right, I think that you can make something out of that. And if you're a good receiver and a good pass blocker on top of that, that's going to help you get those opportunities sooner because they're going to trust you more. And I think that's the equation with Damien Pierce. So I really love the fit with the Chargers. I think it's a place where he won't be relied upon to be the guy. Obviously, they have Austin Eckler, but I think he kind of complements Eckler very well. They're both good pass catching backs, but Eckler's more of that, explosive, shifty guy. Damien Pierce is more of the, he can move around a little bit, but, his density, his ability to stay on his feet, and his vision, that's really what makes him a good runner. So I think that they complement each other pretty well.
Next, we have safety Trey Dean III going to the Packers at pick 174. I love this one because I love the Packers defense as much as I hate the team themselves. Sorry, I know you're friends from Wisconsin, but I love Trey Dean. I love the Packers defense. I love them schematically, and I cannot wait to hear about this one.
Yeah, man. I mean, you kind of hit the nails on the head, and no worries with my friend. He's not even a football fan, so it's fine. But yeah, this was a fun one too. Trey Dean was one of the guys who popped the most for me when I was studying guys before the last one. Because I look at his frame, he's 6'3", so he's that big guy, but he's also really athletic. He moves really easily, really fluid, really explosive when he keys in on plays. So I think there's a lot of upside there. Didn't quite realize it this year, which that's, again, you can't really fault him for that. He was dealing with Todd Grantham for most of the year, and then it was kind of rough. But there are some areas for him to improve. I think what I said last time was on run defense reps. Filling in. Doing, kind of holding your assignment, coming into the box, definitely needs to improve there. Sometimes took bad angles, didn't really wrap up at the contact point. But as a coverage safety, man, I think he's got all the tools. I mean, he's got the size, the fluidity, the explosiveness, and I think he's shown that he can key in on plays too. He's got pretty good instincts on the back end. So, there's a lot of upside there. And I think about this guy, I think he could play 2 high, single high. I think you could put him in the slot. I think he's kind of fluid enough to occasionally file in a corner sometimes, and he's done that at Florida. So, he has that versatility to be that all-around chess piece on the back end. And, obviously with the inconsistency in run defense, I don't think he's going to be an early round pick, but I think he's going to test really well. I think he's got enough playmaking ability that he's shown on tape where I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to take a flyer on this guy. It's a little weird to think about because sometimes teams use those mid to late day 3 picks on special teamers, right? Guys who can tackle, guys who, definitely fly around the field. Trey Dean isn't quite that type of guy, but he's a guy that you can bank on for upside in the mid to late rounds. I think, having his skill set in the back end, I mean, he's a rare athlete, in my opinion. Still has a lot of need for refinement, especially on those run defense reps. But, he's flashed that raw playmaking ability that, makes me want to invest. And like you said, the Packers defense, versatility is key, right? I think he can play multiple positions. I think he can play multiple alignments, kind of fulfill the different roles. For me, that was the thought process in that one, having a rangy safety who can also come into the slot and, fulfill that assignment as well, has the fluid hips to match guys. That to me was the big kicker for him, So I think, a lot of it, again, kind of with Justin Shorter, is unrealized upside, but teams are confident. Coaches can be cocky sometimes, like, hey, I'm the one who can make this guy work. And I think that people are going to look at Trey Dean and someone is going to say that, this guy's got the talent, So I think for him, it's just finding the right spot. I think the Packers could be a really good place for him if you use him the right way, which is as that coverage chess piece. I'm a big fan of the upside there.
Yeah, and then we've got Jacob Copeland, wide receiver, nicknamed the Chosen One, to the Lions at pick 236.
Yeah, this was a fun one. I think, I'm a Lions fan, so I know just how bad the receiving core is. They got my guy Amon-Ra St. Brown, but aside from him, there's really not much there. I mean, they definitely have a need for extra reinforcements. And I think they drafted Treylon Burks. I think they got Zay Flowers in this one too. So they really loaded up on the receiving core. But I think Jacob Copeland has just as much upside as not just as much. I won't say that. That's a little bold. But he does have a lot of upside, especially in the later rounds. You look at his skill set. I remember looking up his high school athletic testing numbers. I think it was like a 4.43, 39-inch vertical. So this guy has the goods, right? He's got that explosiveness. He's got that speed. The problem with him is, the production has never been quite up to par in his career at Florida. And again, part of that's been the situation, right? So I'm not going to really fault him for that. But I do think the upside is there. And again, 6 foot 202. So I had to look up his size because I forgot. I knew he was over 200. I didn't know quite where it was, but 202, right? So that's a pretty dense frame. And then I remember watching him and seeing kind of all the traits that you look for. For me, with wide receivers, I like to use the term 3-level threat, which is, can they separate? Can they make plays at the catch point? And can they get yards after the catch? I think for me, I didn't see a ton of opportunities at the catch point. So, I think the sample size is a little small there, but I do think he can separate and I do think he can get yards after the catch. Because I love the lateral agility that I saw, the quick change of direction. I love the after the catch. Definitely has the frame density to, withstand contact. He's got that contact balance where he can kind of bounce off the guys a little bit, which I love to see that from the receivers. If you can just get them in space, and then let them kind of withstand adversity, kind of break tackles, kind of get extra yards, and not only does Copeland have that contact balance, but he also has that explosiveness to kind of get into space quickly, so using those opportunities to your full advantage, I think he definitely has that skill set. I think he's kind of a hidden gem in this class. Now, again, the sample size is a little bit smaller, but the physical traits are there. I think that's kind of a common theme with a lot of these Florida guys is like they haven't been utilized correctly, but the talent is definitely there. So you look at, if you're an NFL guy looking at that, you're saying like, there's something here. There's something here. I can mold this into something. And I see Jacob Copeland as that kind of guy. And I think about, where would he flourish the best? I think, part of me thinks filing him in late in the rotation so he can learn and develop a little bit would be just as beneficial. But I do think with the Lions, he'd get opportunities more quickly. And I think in that light, maybe he can be a little bit of a spark plug in his first year when he's just relying on athletic traits, but not a lot of people know about him, right? So you get him on the field, just get him into space and let him use those natural traits. Explosiveness and contact balance is a dangerous combination. And I love that. I love being able to like shake off tackles and then explode into open field. That's a lot of fun can be had at receiver with those traits. That's why I was such a big fan of guys like Deebo Samuel. I love when guys have that running back type ability at wide receiver. And I think Jacob Copeland is a guy who kind of has that upside, so I love that. It's something that for me, like, I'm not sure how highly rated these guys are going to be, but I do know that they're going to get chances because they have that natural talent. So I think going to the Lions with this pick, the Lions definitely need to overhaul the receiving core. And I think for a team like Detroit or another team that has, a need for talent, a dearth of talent, getting a guy like Jacob Copeland late could be a high value addition because he's definitely a guy who has that high athletic floor. And so you look for that as guys who could potentially break in early, make some plays, and maybe earn a lasting role. So I'm a big fan of both him and Shorter. I'm going to be watching them throughout the process, and I'm really hoping that they land in the right spot for their development, because I think both of these guys are talented. It's just the way that the circumstances have played out for them at Florida. They haven't really been able to fully realize that. But I think, especially this year, they both flashed a ton, which is enough for me to say, I'm going to take a chance on these guys. So I'm a big fan of the upside in the later rounds and the middle rounds. And especially with Copeland, I think he's got an all-around skill set to be that 3-level threat that a lot of teams kind of desire. So,
yeah, Cope played his heart out. If you watch the Missouri game that just happened, that guy was like, he got hurt, but he was still trying his ASS off. So I mean, I love that.
Yeah.
I love
his, and that's another thing. Like coaches love that heart. They love that effort on the field. That's another thing. Like, a lot of people don't talk about it, but that can be a determining factor for whether you're on a team's board or whether you're not. Do you give 100%? And from what I've seen, Copeland definitely gives 100%. And especially with the state that Florida football has been in this year, sometimes it can be hard to buy in a little bit, right? So you give a little bit more credit for that too. I have a lot of respect for guys who can do that with other things on your mind. Just play football, play 100%. It seems easy when you say it, but it can be harder than it sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last Gator you have going in your mock is offensive tackle Genede Lance to the Chiefs at pick 242, just a few picks after Jacob Copeland.
Yeah, this was one where, the thought process was pretty simple, honestly. With offensive linemen, I like to find guys who have well-proportioned frames. That's just kind of a thing. Like Jackson Kirkland was one guy I wasn't super high on coming to the year because he's definitely powerful. He's definitely got quick, technical hands. But you look at his lower body, it's clear that he skipped a few leg days in there. Definitely doesn't have the lower body density to withstand power at the NFL level. Like I think of guys in the NFL using long arms, using bull rushes against them, and he's going to get rolled back into the quarterback, right? So I like to, at the very least in those later rounds, I like to find guys who have that that physical foundation where they at least have a good frame, right? So you can at least absorb power, so you can at least kind of develop off of that. And I do think Genede Lance has that, and he's also flashed at times the ability to get up to the second level with pretty relative ease. I think he's got decent power. So again, it needs some refinement for sure. He's definitely one of those later round guys. But when I'm looking for offensive linemen in those later rounds, I'm just looking for something I can mold, right? And I think you have to go with that. You just have to start at the very foundation of it, which is, how is he put together? Is he well proportioned? Does he have good length, decent length? I think Genede Lance at least has that. So I'm watching him. I'm watching the other guy too. I think Richard Gaugier, is that his name? Yeah, he's
Gorage.
Garage. I knew it was either Gorge or Garage. Richard Gorage. He's also flashed a little bit too. I think both of those guys have pretty well proportioned frames. So I think for me, when I'm looking at late round guys, that's the first thing I look for. Is just, are they put together well? Can they at least absorb power? And do they at least have that physical foundation that I can build off of? So that was the thought process there, especially with the Chiefs. He's joining his guy Kaiir Elam, but the Chiefs have had some problem with depth on the offensive line in the past. So just get a guy in there that you can develop, and if you put him in, he might not be as refined as he needs to be, but at least he has a strong frame. He's not going to get driven back automatically, right? At least he has those physical abilities. So that was the thought process for me there. Just kind of get some more depth. And I think Genede Lance is a guy who has the physical ability to develop.
Yeah, and common theme with Florida players.
Yeah,
a whole bunch of unrecognized potential here. So
I know I feel like a broken record going through all these because it's just saying the same thing, right? I mean, he's a talented guy. He has potential.
There's a reason Dan Mullins doesn't have a job anymore. Like as simple as that. His guys just never really worked out. And
I will tell you, I'm very excited to see how these guys test and where they go, because you're right. It is a common theme. I think a lot of these guys could be better pro players than college players just because of that, just because they're going to get the development that they need, and they could get the opportunities that they need. Maybe an NFL coach is going to see that talent and actually know how to utilize it, right? That's half the battle. So I think getting them on first off, getting them the coaching they need, and then getting them on the field. And I think that a lot of these guys have the talent to be good players. It's just a matter of where they go. So I'm excited to see how this Florida class progresses. I know there's a few guys that didn't get drafted in this batch either, but I wouldn't restrict the draftable pool to these guys. I think it extends even beyond that. So there's a few other guys that I thought about, and I'm at least going to be, I'm going to be happy to see how it all progresses. And I'm hoping that as many guys as possible at least get opportunities in camp, because there is a lot of unrecognized talent on this roster. So I hope the scouts kind of sift through it, see that, and kind of act on it.
Yeah, I also hope it. I want to see them in the league. Thanks to Ian. You can find Ian's work at Pro Football Network, and you can find Ian on Twitter at Ian_Cummings_9. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks again to Ian Cummings from Pro Football Network. Don't miss out on Monday, where we'll take a look at Florida versus Florida State. Of course, we'll keep you updated on potential coaching candidates and all that fun stuff. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with handicapping expert Lee Sterling. For Locked On Gators, I am Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. You can find all of my written work with Whole Nine Sports. That is WHOLENINE Sports. And I will see you all Monday.